the buck stopped. And that's not the type of person to make this type of comments. It's sickening.
You know,
and it's and unacceptable.
You know, you started with the First Republic and you talked about the minister. I think we're privileged to have seen that fantastic speech he made when he went to the United States.
Yes.
As a young man. That was a thing of joy for all Nigerians,
yes.
irrespective of your religion
yes.
or ethnic divide.
Yes.
And all of that fizzled out. Over time, we haven't seen leaders with such, because it cuts across. Then you could see the parliament then, young, vibrant Nigerians.
Yes.
But how did we as a nation lose out from getting a replacement of those young minds who were actually vibrant and eloquent, and as well in their delivery and achievements in governance?
Yeah, okay, you see the thing, that's a beautiful one. I hang all our socio-economic problems and maybe political problems on the door of the military. You know, in those days, earlier on I told you about the First Republic, where we had all these young ministers, you know, the Raymond Njokus of this world, T.O.S. Benson, all of them, oh my God, they talked 19 to this dozen on any subject matter, however impromptu. I mean, they were vibrant, you know, they had the brains, and they had the interests of this nation at heart. I mean, it's not as if anybody was corruption free, but at least they were very good, very, very good in comparison with what we have today. Now, and then the military came, intervened in politics, you know, cavalierly, and, you know, removed all the value system, all the values that we all cherished, removed them and replaced them with what we now have today. You see, today, nobody talks of merit anymore. Meritocracy is just not there anymore. We now have kleptocracy. You know, you steal as much as you can to fend for yourself, to man your family tomorrow. That's what we now have, and it's all traceable to the military. So, you know, what we have today is a relic of our sordid military past. If you ask that question you were asking, it's a relic of our sordid military past.
Do you see this about to change? Any indication whatsoever?
To change, we say, well, as a lawyer, I would have said, look, the only way this can change is to make good laws, which must be enforceable and which people will have the political will to enforce.
And we're not making good laws.
But we have all the laws there. We have all the laws there.
But
they are not obeyed. And nobody enforces them where we breach them. And that is the major problem. Because if at the end of the day you were going to ask me, where do we go from here? Quo vadis, I will tell you, we must get people, the administration, that we have the political will to enforce our laws, so that if you go from the sublime to the ridiculous any day, now you would immediately be pounced upon and, you know, subjected to the rigors of, you know, judicial trial. And then if you are found guilty, now a condign punishment is foisted upon you.
Just quickly, yes, you know, because we're running off soon. I just wanted to know, you talked about having a problem with the messenger.
Yes.
What about the message? I mean, because if we're going to wait for, say, a saint to come and tell us that, you know, this is where our problem lies, don't you think that we might be waiting forever?
Yeah, you are right. You are very right, Mark. You're right. But you see, as between the message and the messenger, there is a yawning dichotomy. There's a yawning dichotomy. Now, you are the messenger. Before you say, look, this is what you... I mean, it is just like this. Somebody who has been tried, convicted, and sentenced to death for culpable homicide, pointing an accusing finger at somebody who has been tried, sentenced, convicted and sentenced, you know, for manslaughter. That's the way it is.
If you just hold on,
even if the message is wonderful, what of the messenger?
We'll build on that
Yes.
when we return in a moment, because Tunde Balogun is standing by with the headline news. Morning, Ayo. Well, let's get back to this. But the analogy you gave about culpable homicide and manslaughter, does it fit in this circumstance?
Yes, I said somebody who has committed murder and has been sentenced to death, pointing an accusing finger at somebody who has committed manslaughter. That's what it is. And further answer to Malquest's question is that, look, this type of message conveyed by these type of people, you know, is deleterious to the psyche of the Nigerian youth.
Just
Yes,
a moment.
yes.
Some people will say that, you know, the former president did not exonerate himself, in the sense that he said that if in 53 years, I mean, after independence, 53 years after independence, we have not one leader we can celebrate, then truly we're jinxed and we're cursed. Those were his words, and we should all go to hell, you know. That is definitely not exonerating himself.
Yes, that's right. You are very right. But what does that mean to me? I mean, you do all those things if you have stolen, if I have stolen money, and I'm not suggesting that anybody has stolen any money, but if I have stolen money and you have also stolen, and I said all of us have stolen, in what way is that of benefit to? I mean, I have incriminated myself. I mean, incriminating you and incriminating myself. Of what benefit is that to the society? Why were you, what is the, have you just been converted? Have you just been proselytized? When you have regard to the fact that you had the opportunity to rule this nation for over 11 years, I mean, and then you are now saying, okay, all of us are guilty. Of what use is that to me?
You know, Mr. Akri,
Yes.
that's a big observation. It brings to mind what is truly happening in the polity.
Yes.
Comments, statements by almost everyone at this point in
Yes.
time. Some are in books, in the book form. Some you would want to call flippant comments and statements.
Yes.
Trying to do what? Some would say they're hitting up the polity.
Yes.
From all divide, from the opposition party, the ruling party, those that were in the saddle before, those that are out of place now, they're all making comments.
Yes.
And people say these comments are not for the good of the nation.
Yes. That's the problem I'm having. All these comments have to stop, particularly coming from people who were there before. All these ministers who were there before, all the permanent secretaries, all the heads of state, all the whoever, if you have been there before, you never perform, because I cannot point at a particular administration. After Gowon's
Because for the first
administration.
time, we're getting to hear stories about hate speeches,
Yes.
tribalists,
Yes.
so many things that were not in our lexicon
Yes,
before.
it is because we are ne'er do well, so to say. I mean, hate speeches come as a result of incompetence.
You mean some of the politicians?
Yes, they talk about hate now because they have not been able to do that which they ought to have done. So they now think of ways of, you know, either exonerating themselves or creating rancor between one group and another group, so that people could turn away from the atrocities they perpetrated in the past, and so on and so forth. So when this nation is in trouble, you would have forgotten
How
about
can we stop
they don't
them?
want
Because
unity.
now you just talked about trouble. How can we stop them in their track and say, hey, wait a minute.
No,
You're not bigger than the nation.
The way you have organized this thing, and we talk about it, we can have more people to talk about, and they stop talking. We don't want to hear you. Anybody who has been in government in the past has no right to talk, to make comments. All these hate speeches, this one is well now, this one is not being done well now. I cannot stand up and then say I'm going to preach up the need, you know, to vote for, you know, for the current administration again or whatever. But don't talk about this administration if you were there before.
But you know, the question will be, how do we then learn from experience? Because here we're looking at, you know, the forum which he spoke, and you know, and
Yes.
he was invited to speak, right?
You are right.
So it will mean that if you have been a leader before, if
Yes.
you've been in a leadership position,
Yes.
there ought to be things that people can learn from you,
Yes,
right?
you're correct. I mean,
So why should we say they
if
should
you
stop
had
speaking?
trodden- if as a leader you had trodden on the path of righteousness, on the path of rectitude, then you now have the right to say, because of the monumental, you know, couples of experience that I have, let me tell you how I did it. Let me tell you how this went. You see, if these people don't talk, other people will talk. If these former leaders don't talk, they don't open their mouths to talk, other people. We have a sizable crop of intelligent men and women in this country who know what happened at that time and who can talk about what happened at that time, and who can talk about what we should do to improve on the.
Don't you also think
yes,
it's a matter of
things.
perspective? Because also yesterday we had a guest here who says that, you know, history will define the former president and define him in very good light, because, I mean, he was one of the very few privileged people who, you know, held a reign of affairs in this country for a while. You know, 1999 to 2007, and then he also talked about his regime in 1979. But,
Yes.
and they say that history will define his role well. He thought he did well, but his challenge was not getting himself a good successor.
No, it's not. It's not that. It's not that. From A to Z, with the exception, because in philosophy, nothing is entirely good and nothing is entirely bad. I mean, talking like this about this former president, I mean, one does not forget that before his advent, you know, universities were neither here nor there. I mean, particularly, you know, the service, conditions of service in the universities were neither here nor there. Professors were gnashing their teeth, you know, in agony, you know, poverty, and so on. I mean, they didn't know what to do. Lecturers in universities, tertiary institutions as a whole. Now, but when he came, I remember that he did something for that sector of the economy. And today, and that's why I'm strongly opposed to ASU strike, because today, university lecturers, associate professors and professors should be dancing all over the place, because they all ride in jeeps. I mean, thanks to Obasanjo, you know, at that time. But that's the only thing I can remember. The corruption, the noisome level of corruption that we have in this country today, dates back to, IBB, Abacha, and himself. Now, and there was this urge to remain in power, to flout, to breach our constitution, to remain in power, and so much money was spent at that time by the Senate, the deputy president of the Senate, going all over the place, jamboree, trying to make somebody become, president for life in this country, where you have men and women with acute intelligence. I mean, that was at that time. We were trying to be like Zimbabwe, in Nigeria at that time. So there is nothing we can say in favor of, this gentleman that we are talking about. So whoever is saying this word, I mean, say it the way it is, which is the title of my book. Say it the way it is.
Mr. Yes. Time has just told us the way it is, that we're completely out of it. Thank you for coming on this
morning. It is
my
pleasure every day.
Mr. Chris Akiri is a legal practitioner, public affairs analyst and author, and also the chairman editorial board of National Daily Newspapers. We're back after this break.